Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Voices for Change 2.0, the only podcast that focuses on mental health while mixing in movies, music, books, sports, and pop culture. Here are your hosts, Rebecca and Joe Lombardo.
Hey, good morning, and welcome to Voices for Change 2.0.
Hey, y'all. How's it going? Thanks for tuning in this week. This middle of March, we're hoping it warms up pretty soon. Because I don't know about you, but we got snow today.
Yeah, it's rough. I looked outside and I was just thoroughly depressed.
You know, all I can say is and I can't stress this enough, the actual F. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
The wife and I were talking last night about what we were going to talk about today, and I had this idea pop into my head literally.
We didn't cover this idea.
No, we didn't.
Scared.
We didn't cover this idea. This idea popped into my head literally a couple of minutes before the show started, and I thought, what better way to get an honest reaction out of somebody than to do it live on a show, being that we're not doing a show next week because next week
we are.
We're doing a show on your birthday?
We are doing a show on my birthday.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I told you, but it's okay.
You didn't.
Yeah, I did.
I thought we were off. Oh, well.
Did that ruin your thing that you were going to say?
Well, a little bit, yeah.
I'm terribly sorry.
Well, no, that's okay.
17 years, ladies and gentlemen. 17 years.
Here's the thing then, is you got a choice. I was going to spring on you what your birthday gift is.
Oh, no, don't do that.
So, you want me to do it next Saturday?
Because the actual day of it is always so miserable for me for so many reasons. Having the gift being given to me on the actual date is probably the way to go.
All right, that's fine. Okay, then. Sorry those of you tuning in today that won't be with us next week. You'll have to listen to the replay of the podcast to find out what Rebecca's surprise is. It's a good one.
Yes, I decided to go ahead and because we have to reschedule a couple of folks from the time that I was sick. So I decided that we would go ahead and do a show on the 23rd, which is my 46th birthday.
Oh, stop.
It's painful.
It's not painful.
It's horrible. But anyway, moving on. How about Aquaman, huh?
Yeah, Aquaman was pretty hip. We finally got to see it.
Yeah, we for some reason, and if the creators of Amazon are listening, what is up with you guys? Why not have it? I mean, we had to watch it on Vudu. Was not available on Amazon, where all of our other movies are that we buy.
Yeah, that was goofy.
And I don't get it. Why let somebody else capitalize on, all that cash? So.
Yeah. Oh well.
But it was a great flick.
Yeah.
Very well done. Jason Momoa is extremely entertaining.
Yes.
And I was actually very impressed with Amber Heard. Up till now, I kind of was wishy-washy on her, but she actually did a really good job.
Yeah, she was rather
entertaining.
Nicole
Kidman.
So, yeah, Nicole Kidman kicked copious amounts of booty.
Yep. And
that was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And, little side note, if the guy that played Jason Momoa's dad, but it's hard to say,
mm-hmm.
Looked familiar, it's because he was also the guy that played Jango Fett in the Star Wars prequels. So how about that?
Indeed.
Boba Fett's dad and Aquaman's dad. That's quite the potent resume.
All right, so for today, we've got another great show in store for you.
Yep. Speaking of prolific people.
Yes, he is a prolific advocate for mental health, and he also has a very popular blog and his own podcast. So, we hope we can get him some additional listeners today. Maybe some folks will jump over and check his show out once we get that information to you.
Mm-hmm.
But we're thrilled to have him. He's a fantastic addition to the mental health community. So today we welcome
the wonderful, the beautiful, the talented, the lovely Al Levin.
All right. Hey, well, thank you for such a nice introduction. I'm really excited to be here with you guys today.
We are excited to have you, good sir. And you didn't even have to do your hair.
Yep.
How about that?
Exactly. Not a lot of hair to be doing. Just wanted to make sure we were audio only, and I might have changed my white tee into a regular shirt.
No, it's fine. You and I are both follically challenged, so it's all good. Yep.
Keeps the morning routine to a minimum.
Yeah, well, I don't know about you. I shave my head because otherwise I look like a creeper. But
I'm the same way.
Yeah. So there's still that to deal with.
He thinks he looks like BTK or something when his hair
when I grow in my hair, and just the way it sits on my head and with the goatee and all that stuff, yeah, I kind of look like the BTK killer, which creeps me out.
That is funny. Yeah, I definitely have to do the shave or it looks a bit silly as well. And not a lot of it actually grows back, but enough that I definitely have to shave it. And I looked at my mom like she was nuts when she asked me just 2 weeks ago, have you thought about growing your hair out? I was like, really, Mom? So, yeah, not a lot of opportunities to actually grow much out.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And it's funny because back in the day, I was a long hair. I was associated with the burnout crowd. I was a metalhead, still am a metalhead, but had the long hair. And it's funny because the whole time when I was a teenager and I had the long hair, I had got from my parents, cut your hair. So
and then you shaved your head.
Then I shaved my head because it was migrating.
An attack.
And they swung completely the other way. What'd you do? So, I can't win, but.
That's funny.
All right. Well, if you don't have any questions for us, Elle, we're going to jump right into the questions that we have for you.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sweet.
Okay. So usually we start the show with the same question every week. So let's throw that out at you. Where does your mental health journey begin?
All right. So, boy, this could be a long answer, so you need to cut me off. But actually, I'll just keep this part short.
No, you're fine.
Okay, all right. So, I had no mental health concerns that I was aware of until 2010. And I am a school administrator, and in 2010, I was promoted to be the principal. So I shifted to a different school. I'm in a large school district, St. Paul Public Schools. And I was placed in a different building. I didn't know any of the staff. I came into a building in a fairly stressful situation, I think, although any new principal's job is stressful, so I don't want to make it sound like mine was any more extreme than most. But I didn't know anybody. I had a small building, so no admin team. It was really just me. Came into a school that had budget deficits, so I immediately had to cut staff and had several other challenges within the professional side of my life. And then at the same time, I had a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and 2 newborns at home. So I started, and I really never saw them. I was up as a brand new principal. I was, putting in the time. I was up and out of the house before anybody was awake. I was certainly home after dinner time and many times after bedtime. And the stress just piled up quickly, and I realized something was going on. Just my whole body felt different, and started getting concerned, started having symptoms of depression, reached out to my brother, who is a family doctor, who also has been a huge supporter for me through my mental health challenges, and he, made it clear, I needed to get to a doctor. And in my doctor's office, it was the strangest thing. I couldn't stop pacing. It was and he put me on some medication, and I started to see a talk therapist and worked my way through it. And then I eventually, after 2 years doing that, I asked for a voluntary demotion to an assistant principal, a role I was much more familiar with, a lot less stress, although it comes with its share of stress as well. Mm-hmm. And then 2 years later, or 3 years later, I'm sorry, 3 years to the day almost, my brother looked back at our emails and pointed out that it was almost to the day I went through a major depression, again, my second and last, hopefully last, but you never know, bout of major depression. And I always say that second one makes my first one feel like a walk in the park. It got really, really bad, and I eventually took some time off of work and checked myself into a partial hospitalization program. And that really, I'm happy to get into the details of that, but it was really suicidal thoughts and actually finally a plan, and I couldn't get it out of my head. I dreamt about it one night, and it scared me to the point that I immediately asked my wife and sister to join me at my next psychiatric appointment so that they could advocate for me, and I ended up taking work off and checking into a partial hospitalization program.
Wow. Man, you've been through it.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Thank God.
It was a really deep, dark place that I always say, and it's so true, I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy what I went through. And that's why once I got healthy, probably a couple of years after that episode, I started advocating around mental health and started my blog, realized that I couldn't even public, it was still a little private, and that's why I created a Twitter account to drive traffic to my blog, and then eventually created the podcast 1 year ago last September. So it's been going strong for about a year and a half, and I focus strictly interviews of men who have struggled with depression.
Oh, cool. Okay, we're gonna cover your podcast some more a little bit later.
Sounds good.
But we're happy that you found the wherewithal to seek out the help that you got, and that you didn't act on the plan that you created for yourself.
It's so hard when you get that idea in your head and it sort of becomes almost an obsessive compulsive thing. You can't get it out of your head. I completely can connect with you on that level, especially with my background of suicide attempts and as well as cutting. Both of those things, you form kind of what you're going to do and what's going to happen in your brain, and it's just like it's on repeat, like a record player going and over and over and over again. So I can really understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah. It was very pervasive thoughts, and I would work at pushing it outside of my head, and then minutes or an hour later it would be the exact same thought just firing into my brain, and I couldn't stop it. It was really, really a strange thing for me to experience because I had never experienced that before.
Yeah.
Now, what were you diagnosed with?
So, I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder and major depression.
Okay.
And do you?
And it's really interesting. My first depressive episode, clearly there was a reason behind it, right? I mean, having a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and 2 newborns in itself is stressful, but add on a new job with an incredible amount of responsibility, and it really makes sense. My second bout, I was in a different situation. I had gotten a new principal and had a great first review, and we were really connecting, and things were going well, and then I just crashed hard, and really don't have an explanation for that one. Even to this day, I'm not really sure why I fell into that depressive episode. Part of me wonders if I ever fully recovered from my first episode, which was 3 years prior.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Was there any indicators prior to 2010, through your childhood, through your teen years that kind of pointed to, your crash being a possibility in the future?
So looking back on it, I can think of things where I definitely had some anxiety, and it wasn't anything that was debilitating at all, and a lot of it I didn't even realize until looking back. So once I had my first depressive episode, and when I remember being put on one particular medication, and they said one of the side effects is going to be anxiety is going to go through the roof for about 2 days. So be ready for that. It's just going to be a couple days, and then it'll settle down. And I think it was really that experience where my anxiety was through the roof, where I was really able to connect on a different level with what anxiety looks like and feels like, and I would be able to really understand it much better, that I could look back and point to situations, even as an adult, where it was clearly anxiety and I never really attributed it to anything. One example was I can really vividly remember I reffed hockey for a long, long time, and I was going to the high school meeting, and I was going to be running late. And I think most people would be like, bummer, I'm late. But I found myself going excessively high rates of speed in my car to try to get there on time. And it was clearly a high level of anxiety that was creating this. Nowhere near a panic attack. I don't want to make it sound like that, but clearly I was like panicked that I needed to get there on time, and I was going to be late. And I think a lot of guys would have been like, no big deal, I'll sneak into the back of the room, I'll be 10, 15 minutes late. It's not a huge deal.
Yeah, no, I'm actually very similar in that respects. Especially you're running late for something, and you're thinking, I got to get there. Instead of thinking, well, no, if I take my time and I walk in the door a little bit late, at least I'll walk in the door. I'll be alive,
exactly. And now through my experiences, I have tools that I utilize to minimize and mitigate those situations. So, for example, breathing is something I really believe in, and breathing, like focused breathing and focusing on your breath and slowing your breath down, that's a tool we have with us 24 hours a day, and we could tap into at any time. So I'll take, a few deep breaths if I feel any kind of bit of anxiety coming up now, and I think that has been hugely helpful for me.
I couldn't help but, pardon my diversion here, but I couldn't help but chuckle a little bit when you said breathing is really important to you.
Yeah,
I heard that in myself, yes. Breathing is important. If you want to remain a living being, breathe.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I won't lie. I enjoy it. It's a strong part of my everyday. I utilize it most days.
So again, it's the slowing down and the focusing on it. It brings me to the topic of mindfulness, right? People talk about being mindful, living a mindful life, living in the present moment, and I really believe strongly in it as well. And there's research that shows that our minds wander a lot, and most of our mind wandering is negative thoughts. What you have to do, what you haven't done yet, important conversations that may be challenging that you need to engage in, things at work. And there's research that shows if you actually are mindful in the moment, even if it's a task that's not necessarily a happy task, such as driving in traffic in a traffic jam, if you are mindful and pay attention to being in that traffic jam and focus on the car in front of you, focus on your hands on the wheel, and really stay present, you will be more content than if you let your mind start wandering. And I have kind of a funny topic blog post where I say self-care in the shower, and that it's not really what you think it is, but it's being mindful. And I think in the shower is a really good place to focus because you have sounds you can listen to. There are the different sensations of water going over your body. And in addition to that, I think that's a common place where our minds do wander.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's funny. People talk about mindfulness, and I have a real hard time with it.
I do too.
My thoughts wander pervasively. They are all over the place all the time, and trying to focus on the moment, living in the moment at the time, it's hard, you know. You go to a movie or you go to a concert or you go to some sporting event or something, and you want to sit there and enjoy it and focus on it, and you just have this stream. You know, it's like a ticker, like you're watching CNN. You got that ticker at the bottom, you know, and it just doesn't shut up. And I really
it is really strange. I mean, if you just sit for 2 minutes, it's really strange the different thoughts that come into your head randomly, and you know, to really be mindful about a task you're involved in does take effort, and that's why I talk about practicing it in the shower. And I was really excited one day when I was in the shower, caught my mind wandering, and I actually stopped it, and I was like, whoa, all this practice really paid off. I just automatically shut that off and refocused on the shower. And I love practicing mindfulness because if I'm playing a game with my kids, I want to really be there for them and with them. And it's very easy for my mind to start wandering about work, what I need to be doing, and then I'll catch myself and say, you know what, I'm just going to enjoy being with my kids and really being present with them. And for me, it's been really big.
That's
good. That would be a really nice thing for us to be able to start practicing. I mean, I've tried it, and I haven't been successful at it so far. I got an audio book about it and just ended up falling asleep.
Right.
So, you know, it's just something that I happen to struggle with as well, but I think that it would, you know, we have a very good relationship, but there are times when I feel like he's not completely there with me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it would be nice if we could both dial in a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, it's hard, you know. It's hard when you have a good relationship. It's even harder when you're going through rocky stuff. You know, I feel for people that don't have, you know, a happy marriage and they go through that stuff, because that's just one more thing that contributes to it, is not being dialed in the moment. Al, I wanted to ask, when you took the leave from work and you had yourself hospitalized, how was that experience for you? And the reason I'm asking is, you know, back in 2013, had to go through a hospitalization, and it was not a good experience for her in any way, shape, or form. It was very, very detrimental. And I want to compare and contrast, see how yours was. You know, was it super beneficial? Was there anything that you would have done different? Stuff like that.
Yeah, so great question. For me, it was, so before I took the time off to take a leave of absence and check myself into the partial hospitalization program, I took 2 weeks, 10 work days off, and I always call it my unstructured time. And in hindsight, that was like the worst thing I could have done, because in my mind it was like, okay, I'll take time off, I'll let some meds adjust, and then I'll be good and I'll go back to work. And those 10 days were really difficult for me. I found myself on the couch. I couldn't get off the couch. I would make really short lists of 1 to 2 things that I would do the next day. Like, tomorrow I'm going to do 1 load of laundry, or I'm going to clean 1 bathroom, and that's it. And I couldn't do any of that. I remember telling my wife, hey, my psychologist said it's like a brain injury and I need to sleep. Well, one symptom of my depression was not being able to sleep. So I would go up during those 10 days and try to take a 3-hour nap and roll around for 3 hours not being able to sleep. But I felt safe behind the closed door of my bedroom, and nobody would bother me. I didn't have to be doing anything. I didn't have to figure out what to do. And it was really, really tough. I wasn't going out of the house because, you know, God forbid I saw somebody from the community I work in and somebody would say, well, why aren't you at work? And how would I explain that, right? A lot of shame going along with it. And when I did try to go back to work, it was still, again, not good. And once I had the plan for the suicide, I decided I need something more. So that's when I checked myself in, and I was really I was looking forward to having a plan of action for the time I was taking off. Going into the the intake meeting was a really odd situation for me. Like, it was really hard to believe that I was at a point that I needed to be in a hospital. And one of the things that I did that I think was really helpful in hindsight was I asked my wife to go to the intake meeting with me. And, you know, you're sitting around about 5 or 6 medical professionals at an intake meeting. They're asking questions that I don't know if people would necessarily be honest if you're in the midst of a crisis, a mental health crisis. I don't know if people would be honest, and, you know, if they ask, are you self-medicating? You know, do people want to be honest to these people? I don't know. And then also, my depression, I was in such a horrible place. Like, it was impacting my cognition, my memory, my focus. And, you know, my wife was there to correct me, like, for when I started what medication, when I took what days off. And it was really helpful to have her there. But it all felt very surreal to me. And at the same time, I was thankful to have a place to be. And I had anxiety over leaving work. I had anxiety over what are people going to say when I go back. But it was certainly the right move for me. And it provided structure and a learning environment so that I went in every day. So a partial hospitalization program, just so everybody knows, I would go in at about 9 a.m. It would end around 3:30 p.m. And then I was back at home in the evenings. And that routine went for 3 weeks. But it gave me structure, it gave me learning, and I was very selfish during that time to focus exclusively on me and my needs because I knew I needed to get better for my family, for my work, and for me. So I really put a lot of effort into the programming that they provided. And, you know, some of it was a little disappointing. Some of it I was wondering why certain people working there were even working with people. It didn't seem like a good fit for them. But every time I went into a session, I just said to myself, I'm going to listen, I'm going to be positive, and I'm going to get some little nugget out of every piece of this because I need to get better. So I was able to look past any of the negative pieces I thought about the programming and focus on learning something and getting better. And for me, it provided the structure, the learning environment. It allowed me to connect with other people going through challenges with mental health. So I always say it was an incredible kickstart to my recovery. But I also saw a therapist soon after, and they said, you know, you go through a major depression like that, you are not going to have a full recovery for at least a year. And I think that was accurate. You know, I think it was gradually getting better each day, and making sure. I also always say recovery from a depressive episode like that, it takes time and effort. And if you're in such a low place that you can't get off the couch, just to push yourself for like a walk around the block and to acknowledge the baby steps you're taking is really important. The depression can be incredibly debilitating, and I don't know if the general population understands that, and that's part of what my advocacy is about, you know, helping people understand just how debilitating it can be, and that there are so many lives lost to mental illness. And I want to be a strong voice in the community so that people, part of my podcast, one of my goals, I always say my goals are to educate those who know little about depression, to support those going through it, and also to chip away at the stigma. I think the more we hear and are talking about our stories, we provide hope and learning opportunities for people. And it chips away, just the sharing of our stories hopefully helps minimize the stigma.
Yeah.
That was a long answer,
I agree.
Joe.
That was a good answer, though.
Yeah,
it was a good answer. Absolutely. Yeah.
We've got to really quickly take our break here. So we will catch you folks on the other side of Joan Ryan on A Clear Day.
Far from day, far from night, out of time. never go. Follow me to a world you've never heard before. On a clear day, rise and ground you, and you'll see who you are. On a clear day, how it will astound you that the glow of your being outshines every star. You'll feel part of every mountain, sea and shore. You can hear from far and near a world you've never
Hey, welcome back to Voices for Change 2.0. Caught us off guard there. Sorry about that. I'm Joe. She's Rebecca.
Indeed.
And that dude over there that we're talking to is the, again, the wonderful, the lovely, the talented.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, there was a little dead
I don't
spot
know.
there, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens. Live radio, ladies and gentlemen. So,
everybody whose show that I go on that doesn't do their show live ask me how do we do it live, and
I'll never fly and see the lights up above. I will make of me separate part of me. No one there to see.
hey, y'all. Sorry about that. Welcome back to Voices for Change 2.0. The wonders of live radio.
good times.
Good times, yeah. So
We were just talking about how people asking us, how do you do it live? Well, that's how we do it.
Well, that's how we do it live, yeah. By the seat of our pants. So for those who missed it,
I think, right?
That's right. For those who missed it, I'm Joe. She's Rebecca. And that wonderful man over there is the beautiful, the lovely, the talented Al Levin.
I can't.
I drive her nuts with that.
I can't even do that today. I'm just not going to argue with you about that.
Yeah, please don't.
He has
Not
this
only
lovely talent. Go ahead.
I can see live being a challenge in itself, and working with a spouse. That's that's impressive.
It really is a challenge, but I make the best of it,
Oh, my Lord. I carry you on my back.
17 years, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep. Me 18
That's
years
awesome.
in August.
Yep.
Hard to believe it.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Yeah.
Especially, we feel pretty proud of it, especially with my diagnosis of bipolar disorder, among other things, and some of the bumps in the road, so to speak, that my health conditions have brought into the relationship. So, yeah, we're pretty proud of
Us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
as you should be.
Thank you. Well, let's get back to you.
Yeah.
What made you decide to come forward and tell your story?
So I think the biggest piece, a couple of big pieces actually. One was really, really never wanting anybody to be in such a deep, dark, low place as I was, and to do whatever I could to help prevent that from happening to others. That was one big reason. And then, throughout my own research and learning about depression and reading statistics actually was shocking to me, and I couldn't believe that there wasn't more work and talk being done about suicides, because the amount of suicides in our world actually and in the U.S. is just outrageous, and the numbers are shocking to me. So I think we all need to be doing whatever we can to work against that.
Definitely.
Indeed.
And we put out a message on Twitter looking for questions for the show, and we did get a question for you, and I wanted to make sure to give a shout out to Erin Robinson, who is at Flossie Bunny. She asked a question of you. I think you might have seen it, but she wants to know how long your recovery journey was.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think everybody's recovery is so different, right? So my first depressive episode, I didn't take any work off. I started taking medication, talk therapy, and just setting up appointments was anxiety provoking for me, and needing to take time off, and what do I tell people? But I think the first depression, my wife might differ on this, but I think my first depression was maybe a 2 to 3 month recovery, probably closer to 2, where, and again, I was always able to function, I was always able to get out of bed, I was always able to get to work, but I was certainly having symptoms like not eating. I felt like I had a giant knot in my stomach, not sleeping, and really struggling with getting enough sleep and probably living on adrenaline. But my second episode of major depression, like I mentioned earlier in the show, one therapist told me after going through such a major depressive episode, expect a full recovery to take a full year at least. But that being said, I think my depression that was impacting me in a really challenging, negative way was probably 4 to 6 months. But again, really advocating for myself and taking time off, entering a partial hospitalization program was a great kickstart to my recovery and helped me learn some strategies and skills to continue on my path to recovery. And even to this day, my last major depressive episode was 2013. I still go every other week to a men's support group for depression and anxiety. I'm still on one medication. I'm still, focused on my mental health and am pretty aware of it, so that I catch myself if I ever feel like I'm slipping or need to do something like have exercise more, reach out to a friend, let them know how I'm feeling, ask a friend out for a coffee or a beer, or whatever I need to do. So I'm really focused on it, but I think that second episode was probably 4 to 6 months, and I think people need to continue to have hope that they will get better, no matter how low they are, they need to know to reach out for help. And it's okay to reach out for help, and it's not a weakness. It shouldn't be frowned upon. But reaching out for help is an important first step.
Yeah, and it's great when you become self-aware and you start to be able to see the signs before it hits you full on. That's something that I'm, I would say I'm pretty good about foretelling what's coming around the corner.
Yeah, if she can feel it hitting her, and she'll give me a heads up. Hey, I'm feeling something coming on. I'm not in a great.
Think I'm about to crash.
Yeah, I'm not in a great state of mind, and it helps prepare me to be there and be more attentive to her, and focused on her needs, and whatever I can do to alleviate some of the burden of what she's going through.
Right.
So, Hey Al, would you please talk with us a bit about your blog, what our listeners can expect to find there, stuff like that?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So my blog is thedepressionfiles.com, and there are several buttons at the top, and one of them is the blog. And my blog posts, I have over 40 blog posts. My posts have kind of slowed down because I've put such a focus on my podcast, and the podcast, as you both know, is quite time-consuming. But on my blog, I have over 40 posts. I've included a few different guest posts, but it's all focused around mental health. Some of it is specific for men, but most of it is really general. And I have posts that are around suicide prevention and awareness. I have posts that talk about family members and how they can support. All different types of posts related to depression, recovery, suicide awareness and prevention, and so forth. And hopefully it's a great place for people to get different resources. I know one man who tweeted me and said, hey, thank you so much. I brought one of your blog posts to my therapist, and we talked through it and how it could impact him. So I love hearing those stories about how my posts have helped people, or they find them as a great resource. So that's the blog, really, in a nutshell.
Cool.
Yeah, that's great.
That's very cool. And
your podcast, you want to talk about that a little bit too?
Yes, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So my podcast, it's kind of funny how I started. So I've been invited a few times to an incredible conference called Healthy Voices. It's actually put on by a pharmaceutical, so I was a little skeptical at first, but they say it's their way of giving back to the community, and they pay for every attendee to fly to the conference and to stay at the conference, and they do want people to mention that it is put on by Janssen, so that's maybe one thing they get out of it, that it's a promotional piece. They're a division of Johnson & Johnson. They are actually the only company who just recently was approved, a new depression medication was approved by the FDA, and it's through Janssen. It's a ketamine, S-ketamine, which is a derivative of ketamine, and it's a nasal spray. And it could blow the door open on some other options for medications, because it's not an SNRI, it's not an SSRI, it's a completely new classification. And I think there are some questions around it still, but great to see it approved by the FDA. Hopefully people will be able to have it covered by insurance. It's really for people who have depression, drug-resistant or medication-resistant depression and or suicidal thoughts. There are some possible side effects of hallucinations and disassociation, so they do require that you stay at a clinic when you get the treatment for, I think, like 2 hours under supervision, and then you're able to leave. So it could be big. But at any rate, at that conference, I started learning about different ways to advocate. And there was no session on podcasting, but for some reason, I learned about YouTube and everything else, and I became fascinated by this idea of podcasting. And I got a contact, and somebody connected me with Paul Gilmartin of the Mental Illness Happy Hour, And I reached out to him and said, hey, I'm thinking about a podcast. Any suggestions or ideas or tips? And he was fantastic. He sent me a bunch of advice. He allowed me to reach out to him for questions. I really appreciate and love Paul Gilmartin and how helpful he was. So I then, after getting some tips and advice, I went to Amazon and grabbed a couple of mics and some headphones, some mic stands, and the way I started was in my basement, inviting men who I met through these support groups. And it was funny because my kids would be up in the living room and they'd look at me and be like, really, Dad, are we having another strange man come into our house? And I'd be like, yep, we are. And, I have a coaching background as well, and there's this thing called a saboteur, and that's the negative talk that we all have in ourselves. So what I was a little nervous, the point of that is that I was nervous to really launch this whole project. So I continued to have men in my basement. I had about 6 interviews and was really nervous and hesitant to launch it, was investigating the best way to launch it and so forth, and always had an excuse not to because I was nervous, and this means going public. This means getting feedback that might not always be so positive. But in September, I realized it was World Suicide Prevention Day. And I thought to myself, all right, I have one that's edited and ready to go. If this isn't the day to launch it, I don't know what is. So a year ago, last September, on World Suicide Prevention Awareness Day, I launched it. And then I decided to start looking into Skype and ways I could record shows rather than just in my basement so that I could open it up to people worldwide. And that's exactly what I did, and post an interview every other Sunday, so twice a month. I didn't want the pressure of weekly because I do still have my full-time job, and I do still have my family. So it's been fantastic. I interview men who have had struggles with depression, and it's really interesting. I thought that it was just going to be depression. So I reached out to a buddy of mine who has bipolar disorder, and I said, this is really a show on depression, so I'm not sure if I could have you on as a guest. And I realized after my first 5 episodes or so, almost everybody on the show has something in addition to depression. For example, bipolar 1 disorder, bipolar 2 disorder. I've had guys on the show who have schizophrenia. I have had guys on the show with schizoaffective disorder. And the most beautiful piece of the show for me is the amount of learning I have done is like off the charts. I mean, I didn't really know anything about bipolar disorder, the differences between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2, the differences between schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder, and I have learned so much, and I hope that my listeners have too. It's been a phenomenal experience for me, and I hope people are getting something out of it as well.
That's cool.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah, if you're getting something out of it, I'm absolutely convinced that they are as well. And that's a really good feeling. Number one, and number two, it's that's why we do it. We want to bring attention. Mental illness and mental health. It's broad, I guess, for lack of a better word. It's a broad subject there, and it encompasses so many different things, and it's no different than if you talk about, say, cancer. There's so many different kinds of cancer that are out there, and, we get specific about them. We talk about breast cancer or prostate cancer or skin cancer or lung cancer or, leukemia, different things like that. And you have all those different causes and organizations that support those specific kinds of cancer. And then you look at, mental illness, and you've got, bipolar disorder and DID and OCD and schizophrenia and just all these different subjects. And, there are the big ones that you hear about all the time, but then there's the ones that you don't hear quite so much about. And, for us, being able to shed light on all of them is a big thing. We learn about stuff, our listeners learn about stuff. So,
and to give our guests a platform that they may not already have
Yeah.
to talk about what's going on with them and to help educate other people is it's really important. So
yeah. So it's good that you're doing the same thing out there, and good on you.
Yeah, well, thank you. You guys do amazing work, and you guys have, the work you guys have done is incredible, and the awareness you're bringing to people is phenomenal, and you've had amazing guests on the show, too.
Well,
thank you
so much.
We appreciate that.
So what do you think that we as a community need to do moving forward to combat stigma?
Boy, that's a challenging question. The stigma, I believe the stigma is huge, and I think people who brush off the stigma or talk about different things, I honor and respect everybody's opinions, but sometimes I hear people say, it's not stigma, it's discrimination. And in my mind, they're right. There's certainly discrimination against people with mental illnesses, and if we eliminate the stigma, then I think we would eliminate a lot of the discrimination. I think the best way, and the stigma is so damaging because it creates self-stigma and shame, right? One of my blog posts talks about the connection between stigma and shame. And if there's such a stigma and you're hesitant to reach out for help, then, that speaks to some of the data that shows that many people live with depression for 10 years before seeking help. But I think the more we talk about depression, the more we can educate people so that they understand depression doesn't mean you're sad. Depression isn't something that you can just snap out of or just watch a funny movie and get some laughs. Depression, for me, it was like an out-of-body experience. I went on for so long telling my wife and my brother and sister and my therapist, I just want to feel like myself. My entire body felt different. But so to educate people and to talk about people, and a big thing is sharing our stories, and the more people see, like me, a person who has a great job and a family, and I can go through a major depression and have no reason to point to for it, to know that depression can hit anybody at any time, right? So I think there are a lot of negative stereotypes out there, and I certainly had negative stereotypes myself. One of my blog posts is Major Depression, a Humbling Experience, because it allowed me to really reflect on my own stereotypes and stigmas I had towards people with mental illness. In my mind, I thought about the people I see on the street, living on the streets, and it was a really negative image. And then through my research and having experienced it myself, I realized there are many leaders and CEOs and, obviously the celebrities that are speaking out. So it can hit anybody at any time, and we need to be open about it. We need to talk about it more, and we need to make it, as comfortable as we feel about talking about any other illness, such as there's no shame associated with having cancer or diabetes, right? We talk about it and we understand it. Nobody questions why somebody would take insulin. People question, why would somebody take a medication, So we really need to, it's a lot. It's a big challenge to work towards ending the stigma, and I think we need a lot more people talking out about it and sharing their stories.
Yeah, I agree. I'm reminded of back when Beck and I first got together. She was kind of nervous to tell me what she dealt with early on, and then after we were married and she'd be going through something, she would be, don't tell them I deal with this, don't tell them I deal with that. And now to be able to do that and not feel any shame about it, it's like, well, yeah, I have bipolar disorder, or I have any number of things, right? And being able to talk about it, and at this point, it's people are going to either warm and welcoming, or they're going look at you like you have a third eye in your forehead, and those are the ones that we need to reach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those are the ones that need to learn and understand and not keep this medieval view of mental illness, you know.
Right, absolutely.
Al.
Yes.
What's next for you?
What's next for me? Ooh, that's a big question. So a couple of things I'm really pushing right now are, I mean, the mental health work I do is really my passion. I mean, I still love my job as an administrator. I still love working with kids and teachers. But right at this moment, I get my energy from the work around mental health advocacy. So I hope to continue my work with the more public speaking. I was invited. I'll be speaking with two other advocates at the Mental Health of America's conference, MHA, Mental Health America. They have an annual conference in June in D.C., and I'll be speaking there. So I'm looking forward to just, doing much more advocacy work, continuing that work. I'm also sharing with people, I think there's an incredible need to have a better system of support for educators. So I work in a large urban district, and not to discount rural districts or suburban districts, they have their challenges as well. Our school, urban schools in particular, we're working with kids who are going in and out of complex trauma on a daily basis. And everybody knows about the mental health needs of our students, which is outrageous, right? I mean, there are so many needs, and the system is pretty broken around supporting them. We need to do much better. And people realize that, at least, and are talking about it. I don't think people are talking about the consequences and implications that dealing with children who are going in and out of complex trauma on a daily basis has on us, the educators. So I'm really pushing that. And I've had on Twitter, I've tweeted out a survey for K through 12 educators in the U.S., public educators in the U.S., just a kind of a general sweeping survey. And what I'd like to do now is to take it to the next step and do a survey that's more credentialed, right, and go through the correct procedures so that I can really have evidence that we need more support. And I mean, I have many stories that I can share about challenges educators are going through with their own mental health from what they see and deal with on a regular basis. But most of it right now is anecdotal. My theory is that we need much more support, and the feedback and input I got from the survey really speaks to that. But again, I didn't go through any of and I want to do that. And once I have evidence of the need, I'd like to share that with people who can make some big changes, superintendents in districts, Minnesota Department of Education, and even the federal government, to show that we need to really be supporting our educators better, because surrounded by children with a lot of mental health needs, and it's impacting us. And if we aren't able to take care of ourselves, we can't take care of the kids. So that's really one of the big pushes I'm working towards right now.
Cool.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, just really quickly, we're about to the end of our show here. We've gone over a little bit because we had that slight hiccup earlier. So we wanted to give you the opportunity to get in some of this important information. So tell us once again where our guests can find you on social media, about your website and your podcast.
Sure. So the best place to find me is thedepressionfiles.com, and there are buttons at the top for my blog, my podcast, for coaching, for public speaking, so you can find it all there. If you want to, I'm on iTunes as well, The Depression Files. If you'll find me on Twitter, and my handle is allevin18, So it's ALLEVIN 18. And there I tweet a lot of my links to my podcast episodes and my blog posts as well.
Sweet.
Okay. Very good.
Yay.
Well, thank you very much for being on with us today. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a great show.
Like I said, it's been an honor for me. I've listened to your show. You guys are doing amazing work. So I just really appreciate you having me on the show.
Alrighty.
We appreciate you taking the time to be with us, good sir.
Yeah, stay on the line.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, we will catch you next week. We have another amazing guest in store.
Mm-hmm.
And
plus, it'll be the birthday girl's day.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big day.
You know.
So here we are going to end the show with Tara Naomi, Help You Fly.
Have a great day, everybody.
I know how misery loves her company. Got a party gathered around you now. They come running from far and wide, but who's gonna help you fly? And they come calling when you're falling down. Someone to always pick you up off the ground. Oh, nobody wanna see you cry, but who's gonna help you fly? Whoa, 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 who's gonna help you fly? Well, the city that I live in feels smaller every day. It's like a little town. People always gonna help you get by, but who's gonna help you fly? It's a messed up situation when I got the word to call on when the well runs dry. But I just wanna celebrate my life. Wanna find someone to help me fly. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Who's gonna help you fly? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Who's gonna help you fly? I wanna fly
Don't miss the Mental Health Memoir of the Year, It's Not Your Journey. It's Not Your Journey is the true story of one woman's 20-year battle with mental illness and her recovery from a suicide attempt in 2013. Rebecca Lombardo candidly reveals her real and raw emotions in dealing with depression, bipolar disorder, the loss of her mother and brother, and more. Pick it up today on Amazon.com or visit www.RebeccaLombardo.com for more information.
Join us next week as Rebecca and Joe continue to battle the stigma of mental illness. Follow us on Twitter. This is for Change 2.0.